Welcome back. Before we went on break, Mohammed mentioned, which is also what you stated earlier, that Mariam is lucky in quotes because she's married to an American who, went to the embassy and this got out, and now international community putting pressure on the country. But there are thousands of other women in that country facing all of this, but it seems to be affecting the women.
Well, yes.
Explain that to me.
We're coming from a time when women were thought to be properties that were owned. We're coming to a time where women were not allowed to do a lot of things. They're not allowed to work. They're not allowed to own property. They're not allowed to, sometimes they're not even allowed to drive. We're coming from an era where women were looked at as like second-class citizens. And when the Universal Declaration of Human Rights said, in Article 2 says, no discrimination, at first instance, people would have said it referred to men and women. But now, it's not only men, women, and children. Mm-hmm. There should be no discrimination of race, skin, origin, status, color, sex, and whatever form.
But looking at the penal code,
yes,
that's been used in Sudan,
yes,
is there anywhere that distinguishes between men and women? So is this crime only permissible if the woman commits it?
If a man denounces Islam, he's also guilty of apostasy. Yes, nobody, male or female, is, according to the Islamic law, allowed to denounce the religion.
What about adultery? Because her father got married to a Christian woman, right?
There was a case I was reading about. I think that was the day before yesterday, and it was a lady that was raped severely. I forget the name of the case now, and the lady was sentenced to jail and was flogged and was asked to pay a fine. And the men that raped her was given 40 strokes of the cane. Now, the Islamic law, to some extent, has placed women as minors, not as, they're subject. They're subject to the protection of men. That's what the law says. Like a woman, an Islamic woman that wants to leave, I don't know if that still applies, the country has to go before a committee to state why she's leaving, what she's going to do, and all that. And then if she has approval, she can go. But a man that needs to leave, leaves.
All right, let me hold you there. Now, social media,
must have been buzzing.
Yeah, they are talking. And the very first tweet comes from Christy. Christy seems to be one of our very dedicated, tweeters. And she says, it is preposterous to execute a woman because of her belief. There is freedom of faith / religion. Isn't it respected in Sudan? Well, obviously not. And Nani Chow says, Mariam Yahia Ibrahim has the right to choose and practice her faith. # say no to impunity. # save Mariam. And Grace McCarthy says, sentenced to death for her faith, we must stand up, take action, and be her voice. And Edgehog says, I don't want to live in a world anyone can be put to death for her faith. Please sign this petition to # save Mariam. And Samuel says, come on, religious leaders, speak up about Mariam. # save Mariam. And of course, Samuel went further to say, no person should die for their choice of religion or even the lack of it. And James Goodman says, nor shall you stand by idly when your neighbor's life is at stake. Leviticus 19 verse 16.
Oh, he's
there
quoted
we have a Bible verse there. And Graham says, praying with friends across Europe, in Africa and the US for the Lord to intervene to # save Mariam from execution in Sudan. Now, I want to direct this question to Marwan or to Mohammed from Uganda if he's listening. There seems to be a lot of talking, praying, more praying and all that. But we need action. We need something to be done. Otherwise, I'm afraid Mariam might just lose her life. So what are your thoughts on this? There's too much talk and praying. So what are your thoughts on this, Marwan?
I think there is very little that the outside world can do in the case of Sudan. I mean, there's presidents here. There have been a lot of issues in the past. And it just looks like there's very little that the outside world can do. But one thing is the leaders of Sudan can be embarrassed easily. There are previous cases regarding Islam. I mean, there was the issue of the teddy bear, if you could remember, teddy bear that was named after the Prophet, and that caused a big problem with the teacher being sacked. I'm not aware whether the panelists are aware of this story, but it happened about 3 years ago, again related to practice or mispractice of Islamic law.
Okay.
So we're really hoping that the Sudanese themselves will rise up, and there's a rise in, a rising civil society in Sudan that can actually come up and maybe address this and challenge this. So maybe that's one thing that we can hope for.
Okay, let's move away from Sudan just a bit, because we're talking about religion and the state in general, even though right now with the apostasy case, Sudan is in the news and the Islamic law is in the news. But time and time again, we hear of countries imposing a particular religion on its citizens, or a country insisting that its citizens act in accordance to a particular religion. Now, Mohammed, I'll address this to you. At what point should we draw the line between religion and state affairs? Mohammed, I'll repeat. Okay, I'll repeat that question. I'm saying time and time again, we hear of countries that impose certain religious laws and practices on its citizens. Insisting that its citizens conform to a certain religious belief. What point should we draw the line between religion and state affairs?
Hello?
Mohammed, can you hear me?
Hello?
Okay, I'll direct this question to Nkechi while we get Mohammed back. Religion and the state. Do they marry at any point? Should they even be married at some point?
This draws back even to the Roman Empire. There was a time that in Rome, everybody was Catholic. You had to be Catholic. But we've come out of that now. And then you have different religions taking place there. I think the issue we're having now is that treaties and covenants are seen like a Western, a foreign, not our culture kind of thing. Yeah. So people are seeing it, oh, this is the West trying to impose their ways on us, and not seeing the benefits of these provisions as if it affects their citizenry. You understand? If people start seeing the provisions and how it betters their society, then possibly they will remove the stigma that comes with it coming from the West and accept the values and live accordingly. Because now it's seen anything, human rights is seen Western. They are trying to impose it on us. But if we begin to believe it, if we begin to adopt it as our own customary domestic laws, it won't be seen like a foreign thing anymore.
I think people fear that if they do that, they will lose their tradition, because recalling the package we watched earlier, there was the man there saying, this is our tradition, this is our custom, and
it's seen as losing who they are, their identity.
If we don't stick to this, we have lost our identity. This religion is a part of us; it's a part of our culture. That I usually hear things like that. So how do we balance that? How do we maintain culture and still respect people's human rights?
I believe any culture, any custom that is repugnant to good conscience, that's repugnant to equity, that's repugnant to justice, should be reconsidered. Remember, coming back to Nigeria, there was a time we used to kill twins. We thought they were evil. We thought they brought some kind of bad luck. It was our culture. But with time, we've dropped it. And I don't think we've lost our identity. I think anything that that does not better your citizenry, that does not improve it, that does not advance it in any way. Culture should, it's dynamic. It's a way of life. Why don't we all go to the farms anymore? Why do we go to offices? Why do we use phones? It's against our culture to use phones, but we use them because we see it makes things easier. I believe people have to be trained. People have to be carried along. It's not just sitting down making all these treaties and these conventions. You have to make it apply to everybody.
Okay.
If it can't apply to everybody, it's good on paper and bad in the world.
Okay, Mohammed, I believe we still have Mohammed on the line, and I would like him to answer this. Mohammed, are you still on? Okay, what I want to know your opinion in this. Religion versus the state. Should there be a line?
Pardon, can you repeat the question, please?
Okay, I'm saying religion and the state, you know, especially when the state tries to impose certain religious practices on its citizens, should there be a line, or can religion be immersed in constitution? Did you get that?
I don't think I get the whole question.
Okay.
And I wish that what I understood, because the line is broken, your question around about the religion and the state. And that is the good point, because the Sudanese government, they try to Islamize the whole state to rely on one reference on the constitution, which is Islamic law. If we compare that with the diversity of Sudan, there are Muslims and non-Muslims, and they are living together. So the religious and state in the constitution is very clear. It doesn't have to Islamize the government, and you have to ensure the right for religious for all the Sudanese citizens, and also we have to consider the diversity of the Sudanese people as Muslim, Christian, and non-believers if are there.
Okay.
All right, let me bring in Marwan to the conversation. Now, Marwan, what would you say is peculiar to President Omar Hassan al-Bashir's regime? You know, how are Sudanese reacting to this, you know, development? Because from reports, we even have some, you know, Muslims who say no, or some Muslims who feel that, you know, this is an infringement of Mariam's rights. So, how, in your opinion, what do you think? How do you think, you know, Sudanese are reacting to this?
I think the public, the regime is weakening now. They've had their time, really. I mean, Bashir came to power in 1989, so we're talking about 25 years now. It's slowing down. The whole trend of the Islamist trend of the party has slowed down significantly. They are divided, they are split. The party itself is split, and people are speaking. Other parties are speaking out against the government. So this is yet another example of problems that the government now is facing. And I think we're going to hear a lot more voices now in Sudan speaking out. This is an extreme case. Let's not forget that. It is a very extreme case. No one has ever been executed before in Sudan because of apostasy. So it's unlikely to happen, let alone a woman, let alone a mother of an 18-year-old child. So this probably is not going to happen, really. I think at the moment, the government is just holding itself, restraining itself, but eventually it will be, it will be overwritten. This law, in this case, is going to be overwritten. Another case is the husband is actually a South Sudanese living in America, so there's a dimension there as well of a relationship between the two countries.
Okay, we know that Mariam, her husband, and her lawyer have said time and time again that they're going to appeal, the judgment. So they're going all the way to the highest courts in the country. What exactly needs to be done to get Mariam free?
I think there is room for Africans. I think African Union is very silent here. We haven't heard their voice. We also haven't heard the voices of the neighboring countries, really. And I think then there's room for leadership there, for people to contact the president, for clemency and something like that. There's definitely room there for such intervention. Okay,
all right, thank you. Nkechi, although the African Union and some neighboring countries haven't really spoken out, but the international community has been very outspoken. But before I even dwell on that, I'm quite interested in your opinion. The president, when he came in, we didn't have this penal code. So what happened? Why the transition to this?
He decided he wanted to Islamize Sudan, he and his government, and he went ahead to do it and made Sudan a purely Islamic state. So he has, as the president, he has, I guess, the prerogative
So he woke up one morning and decided,
I want to believe he works with the members of his government.
And they felt it was better off for the states to...
For whatever reason. But then the issue remains on becoming an Islamic state. Does that mean that all their ascension to treaties and international laws are kept aside? It will be an interesting case, honestly, because it will prove to the world if Sudan is actually interested in the international treaties it has entered or not. And for me, even if Ibrahim is released today, the fact that you kept a pregnant woman in prison is a cry out enough.
She could press charges.
Even if she doesn't, her child is mad for life. We pray her baby is okay. There's some things that you can't even equate. Even if she's released today, the trauma she has gone through. That's why we shouldn't just make noise and then keep quiet. We need to make noise and keep making noise until something happens.
Okay, at this point, I'll have to quickly, you talked about, how people can petition the international community because of the treaties that have been signed. Just for those watching, if a case like this happens and you know that your country is bound by certain international laws that they have signed, how do you, defend yourself using all these kind of laws?
Well, first off, you're supposed to go through the legal process in your country. You're supposed to get to the highest authority, the Supreme Court of your country. And if that fails and the treaty your country assents to has room for you to petition on individual business, then you petition, showing that you have exhausted your legal system in your country, and this is what it is contravening according to the treaty in which the country has ascended to. So, but unfortunately, it's not a very common, it doesn't happen often, but there is that. I think a way that will be faster and make more impact if actually the Sudanese women themselves, can mobilize themselves strong enough and hard enough. Of course, it wouldn't be easy to say, look, we've had this, we want it to change. Scholars for the Quran say there are some aspects of Islamic law now that is kind of they've stopped it, like the zakat I told you about, where you have some tax monies paid to certain groups of people. That has somehow stopped, and they say that this Islamic banking is a relatively new thing in Islam. So it's like Islam itself, the laws are revolving. So there's room to actually fight this. There's room to actually make an impact. But the people that need to talk the most are the people that are affected. Then the international community needs to now support them to give them a voice.
Okay, we could go on, but I have one final question for Marwan. Now, do you see the government bold from international pressure to stop her death sentence?
Yes, I'm predicting that there will be clemency. The government is going to intervene in the end, and this matter will end peacefully, and Mariam will be freed. That's my guess. However, of course, it's the first, precedent of this case. So, but I guess that's going to be the case, and I hope that it will be.
We'll keep watching and listening to the reports coming in from Sudan and all across the African continent. Thank you, Nkechi, for being a part of this.
I just want to say one more thing before I go.
Okay,
to
quickly.
everybody that makes the laws. I want to align myself with Judge Krisha, who says that negative bans without supporting schemes will just aggravate the malady.
Could you break down
if you want to actually stop something, just don't make the pronouncement. Do things to support your pronouncement, to make the transition easier for those that are affected.
And that ends today's show.
I'm going to take that home.
I will. I just recorded it. So that's how far we can go on the program. Thank you once again for coming. Thank you, Marwan, for
Thank you so much, Marwan, for coming.
Staying with us and sharing your wonderful thoughts. And Muhammad,
all the way from Uganda.
All the way from Uganda.
Wow.
And thank you for watching myself and watching Moses. See you next week. Bye for now.